Okay, it's 6:33, and I will call this work session of the mayor and council to order. All members are present and accounted for. First item of business is to review the regular business and public hearing agenda items. On the regular agenda items, we have the invocation, the announcement, pledge to the flag. We have Girl Scout Troop 3351 and Troop 1650 coming tonight. Under ceremonial matters, we do have a Volunteer of the Year award. And we have the minutes from the last council meeting. Does anybody have any objection or changes to the minutes from the January 23rd meeting?
I've got a few changes.
Okay, can you tell us what those are?
I also have one. I'll just tell you mine while he's looking for his. On the Christy Linsky for planning, it shows that Councilman Howard was against. He was for. I was against. Page 20.
That's your only change?
That's my only change, yes, thank you.
Page 20. Consideration and action to allow council comment on city attorney engagement letter. I think there was somebody else besides Councilman Howard who spoke on that. There's me. Yeah. I can give you some quotes if you'd like them. Is it 14? Yeah, on page 14, excuse me, it says Susan Hetherington. It should be Sharon Hetherington. That's all I've got.
Okay, we'll make those changes then and vote on the minutes at the next council meeting, unless anybody has an objection to that. Okay. Moving on, we'll have invited guests. Mr. Ewing will be here tonight to give us sound bites on the history of Snellville, community and department reports. We'll have Mr. Britt here from STAT and Chairman Williams here from the Planning Commission. The consent agenda, we have several items on the consent agenda for, they will not require a vote. They're all first readings, except for the nomination of Chair Todd Warner and Vice Chair Jerry Oberholzer to the URA board. The URA bylaws say that they make that recommendation, and that's who the board has asked to be the chair and vice chair. Does anybody object to anything being on the consent agenda and want it removed from the consent agenda?
I'd like to remove the solid waste ordinance.
Remove it, excuse me, remove it altogether, or just remove it from the consent agenda?
Remove it altogether. I want to do some more research on that.
Okay.
Put it off another week or another meeting.
So when we get into the regular meeting, if you can make the motion to amend the agenda to remove item E. Does anybody else object to anything that appears on the consent agenda or want it moved and placed on our regular agenda? Okay. We have no public hearing tonight. Under new business, we have the mayor's nomination and council's confirmation of interim city manager. Does anybody have any discussions for that? I do have something that needs to be discussed in exec session with that. We then have consideration and action on selection of parliamentarian. Mayor Pro Tem Wetz.
Yes, I have a candidate, Michael Byrne, to put forward to council tonight for our parliamentarian.
Consideration action on surplus of vehicles and equipment. Mr. Treadway.
Ms. Johnson. Surplus property. The surplus property.
The surplus property is just tractors and, one vehicle, that needs to be surplus. The repair cost would far outweigh the worth of the equipment would, not be worth repairing, so.
And declaring the property surplus allows us to dispose of it through bid or other processes.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Treadway or Ms. Johnson on that?
Mr. Treadway, are we going to use eBay or some type of auction type situation, or have we done that in the past to dispose of this, or is this a public auction type disposal, or what do we normally do?
Well, we haven't decided yet on these. We have used eBay on some equipment. We have gone through just a regular bidding process and public auction. So we'll take a look at these and decide how we dispose of them.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mayor Pro Tem Wetz, do you have a question?
No.
Moving on to consideration action on purchase of automotive license plate reader system. Chief or Mr. Treadway?
It's a request to purchase the LSAG system. We have the letters attached. It's a sole source in that it is the only system that the Georgia Department of Motor Vehicles allows to pull that driver information. DDS and Georgia Motor Vehicles allows to pull the driver's information, the insurance information, and the tag information. It's also the only system being used in Gwinnett County, and it allows us to use the warrant system that's done by the sheriff's office. The funding source of this is $10,000 from the 2005 SPLOST, where we sold the scales from commercial vehicle enforcement and got that back. The balance to come from drug funds, and we have they will order it. It'll take about a month to get here, and then it'll be installed probably within that period of time.
Chief, are we going to install it in one of our existing vehicles?
Yes, sir. It'll go on one of our newer cars.
Thank you. Oh, and I want to just make sure, the maintenance is like $1,600 a year on that?
After the first
After
year,
the first year?
there's nothing this year.
Right.
It's included
And
in
then 16
it.
after that?
And the purpose for that is that each one of those cameras cost about $4,000 a piece, and so if you pay the $1,600, if anything goes wrong, they replace it. So it's just.
Now, let me ask you, do we have any fees for subscriptions or to subscribe to the databases or anything like that?
No, sir. We're already
All in.
authorized to draw from all of those, so there's no fee for that. And the only reason we're doing the maintenance is because those cameras can go out, and it's just kind of like getting insurance, really, is what it boils down to.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions for the chief? E, consideration action on authorizing a resolution for purpose of pursuant to Snellville City Charter, opening investigation to then Councilman Mike Sabah. Councilman Howard.
Okay. As I understand it, Councilman Sabah has a statement he wants to make tonight. Where we time that statement, I guess, is the question of whether or not this could come off of the agenda based on him completing that statement. So I don't know how do we normally proceed, or how would we proceed with that?
Let's go into, we're gonna have an exec session. Let's try to discuss that in exec session.
Okay.
I believe our city attorney also has a standing opinion on that we can discuss. Consideration and action on resolution to retain counsel for the city of Snellville. Mayor Pro Tem Wetz. Who's gonna pay for those funds?
We'll have to amend the budget once we have the approval of the rest of council to make that higher.
So you're saying it's gonna be funded through the city,
Yes, ma'am.
not by the individual council members? Okay. Whatever you wanna do, I'll give you the floor.
I had an opportunity to take a look at that particular consideration that we're referring to for Councilman Witts. The law is clear that the city cannot pay for a alternate attorney on this particular matter. The city charter outlines that the mayor appoints the city attorney. There's an inherent conflict under the law that would permit or prohibit the city council from hiring their own attorney, and also the city paying for that particular matter. I could either send the information to council members, but the city would be prohibited for paying for outside counsel to advise city council members. If city council members want to pay for it themselves, they're certainly free to do that, but it looks like the law is clear that the city cannot pay for this particular matter.
You have sections of the charter that say that?
There's actually a couple of case law on that. The charter is clear that city attorney is appointed by the mayor. There's case law out there that indicates there's a conflict of interest for the city council or a body to elect their own or appoint their own attorneys to advise the city, whether it be the mayor or the council. There's also case law out there that indicates that the city would be prohibited and authorized not to pay for any subsequent council that would advise the mayor or the city council. Likewise, a mayor cannot go out and appoint her own council if the city council, she was unhappy with the city council. So it cuts both ways, but that action will be prohibited.
And you have that case law at hand?
Not in hand. I could be glad to provide that to council members.
Okay.
We're still gonna bring it up at the agenda. With the absence of any case law in front of me, I have no idea whether that's right or wrong, so I'm still bringing this forward for a vote, and then if it's proven that it is something that's prohibited, we'll deal with it.
If there is a resolution drafting that and appointed of the budget, the mayor would be authorized to seek a writ of mandamus to prohibit that particular action. As counsel for the city of Snellville, it is prohibited as a matter of law, and I would advise city council not to pass a resolution. There's no authority for them to do that. That's the matter between the council.
Thank you, Mr. Oberman. Any other comments? Okay, we'll move on then to the work session. Mr. Treadway, do we have any correspondence to review?
No, ma'am, and if we could back up just a half step, I apologize. As you were going through the committee and department reports, stat report will be postponed until the second meeting. I didn't have my sheet on the computer up quite yet, so I apologize for that. But they've asked to have their normal report scheduled for the second meeting every month.
No problem. Thank you. Mr. Oberman, any other city attorney reports?
No, not at this time.
Discussion item, city attorney bill. To my knowledge, it still hasn't been paid. I will just reiterate, Mr. Treadway, I understand there's some objections to the bill. I haven't seen any particularized items. If council wants to make those aware, I'm happy to ask Mr. Oberman to remove those from the bill, but until that time, I would again direct you to pay Mr. Oberman's bill pursuant to the charter. Any further discussion on the city attorney bill?
Yes, I've asked for clarification, have received no response. I don't feel we should pay the bill until there is clarification. I'd like to know what I'm paying for.
As indicated in our emails, unfortunately, because of attorney-client privilege, and there's information that cannot go in substantial detail into those bills, which are subject to the Open Records Act, some of it is deliberately left out so we can protect attorney-client privilege with the city, which is not subject to the Open Records Act. That's all I have to say on that.
There can be some kind of definition. November 15th, spoke to Mayor Couts. That's the end of it. November 15th, same day, spoke to Mayor Couts regarding CFO, pro tem, and minutes. And as I advised you, I'd like to know what each charge is for, specific to that project. So at the end of the project, we can look back and see what it cost the city. Right now, we've got $180. I don't know what it goes to. And that's just one day.
Again, Councilman Emmanuel, if you want to make a list of specific charges and you have an objection to those, I'm happy to look at it. I think I notified you several weeks ago. If you want to give me itemized numbers on the bill, I'm happy to look at those and bring those to Mr. Oberman's office.
I supplied some of those to Mr. Overman. There was no response.
And I understand, but it's my understanding that your response was pretty generic, not line item by line item.
The November bill or the December bill as an entree to see where we're going to go.
Right, I
before
understand
go
that.
through all
But
of
what
it.
I'm saying is, my proposal is that the bills need to be paid. They're past due. The charter gives the sole authority to the attorney to appoint the, to the mayor to appoint the city attorney and to cause for them to be paid. If you have specific items, you did give examples, but you didn't go line item through line item by all the bills. If you have specific things that you believe are questionable and would like to be removed from the bill, the rest of it, I believe, needs to get paid until we can resolve those questions.
I started it, and I'll go through the rest of it, but it's going to be pretty much every line item.
Item number B, Vietnam Vets Memorial, Mayor Pro Tem Witz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just to bring the council up to date on where I am with this. I've spoken with former Councilman Jim Walters, who was instrumental with the J.C.'s when that monument was built. I've also talked with Walton EMC Gas and several veterans groups, and pretty much here's where we're at. We cannot get gas at a reasonable fee to the monument where it stands right now. So it was my intent to move the monument perhaps over to the other side of our sidewalks out there, to in front of where the curve is there in front of the senior center, and to carve an area out there and to put the monument there. Mr. Walters, I respect the fact that he's the one that originally did that, was the man behind the donations, everything to put that monument there, has concerns about us moving it. So I think I'm moving in another direction because of the response we had when I mentioned relighting the torch. I think it's something that was pretty important. It was part of the city for many years. I think many people would like to have it back. So what I'm proposing now is that we leave the Vietnam Memorial exactly where it is, and that we build a new memorial. An obelisk. I'd like to permission to sit with our very talented city planner and go through some ideas, but perhaps an obelisk carved in there, maybe taller, dedicated to freedom, all Vietnam veterans, POWs, and MIA. Not Vietnam veterans, excuse me, all veterans of all wars, including Afghanistan and Iraq, including POWs and MIAs. It'll be a separate monument from the current Vietnam Memorial. That'll be staying where it's at. And this one we can get gas to. I plan on raising the money through veterans organizations. I've already also gotten some information coming on paving bricks and things that could be sold, perhaps, to help with that. Maybe sell them at the farmer's market and help with paving. That was something brought up a couple years ago, and we didn't have the time to get that accomplished. This time we'll be able to have all summer to do it. So that's where we are with it. So it looks like it's going to have to be another memorial, and we'll be working on getting it done. I'm still shooting for November 11th. So it puts a little bit of a curveball in that, but I've still got hopes and dreams of making that happen.
Any questions for Mayor Pro Tem Witz? Okay. Item number C, mediator, Councilman Sabah.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we're all here in agreement that we need to have a mediator simply for our retreat. And I see that also Councilman Howard has similar agenda item. I would probably like to ask if there has been a mediator identified, so we can get together at a sooner than later date. Maybe Russell can help us out.
Mr. Redway?
I have been in contact with folks at the Carl Vinson Institute of Government concerning coming in and moderating / facilitating a retreat. And I was planning on reporting this at the other item, but we can talk about it now. And to the extent that I've actually got some alternative dates from the folks at the Vinson Institute for us to look at. And those two dates are March the 10th or March the 24th. Those are Saturdays. If you're a NCAA basketball fan, you may want to go for the 10th because I think the tournament will have started by the 24th. They're available on those days. They also have given us a couple of other dates during the week that as an alternate if that Saturday date doesn't work. And they're proposing a day-long session, probably starting about 8 o'clock to about 4 in the afternoon.
I'll be in Athens at a seminar on the 10th. I don't know about the rest of council.
Does the rest of council maybe have their schedule? Can we perhaps even nail that down? Mayor, is the 24th okay with you?
24th works for me.
I mean, I don't want to pressure anybody, but if we can nail this down tonight, then I mean, the 24th is fine with me.
Yes, they were booked up all the way through the end of February.
It's okay with me. I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that as well.
Good on the 24th.
Mr. Redway, can you make it happen for the 24th? Where will that occur?
We'll finalize that, but I think the most important thing was to get a date and get a facilitator there. We'll figuring out where we're going will be the easy part.
Dr. Trud, could I make a small recommendation? Can we have this retreat happen outside of the city of Snellville somewhere, possibly in an area that well can drop about 5 minutes or 10 minutes away?
That's what we're looking at, exactly.
Okay, so Key West is out of the question.
We could probably fly down there. I mean, it'd probably work.
Cheap flights on AirTran. Mr. Redway, what is the cost of the mediator? Do we know?
The Vinson Institute charges $1,050 plus expenses. I'm sure their expenses will be limited to their drive time back and forth from Athens that day, and there shouldn't be any other incidental expenses.
And that money we have set aside in the budget and the contingency?
Yes.
Any other questions for Mr. Treadway? Okay, moving on, item number D, nomination of John Mitchell for the Board of Appeals. I believe his application was in everybody's packet when Ms. Foster withdrew her nomination. Mr. Mitchell, who lives over off of Cambridge, had previously said he would be interested in serving on the Board of Appeals. So if anybody has any questions for Mr. Mitchell or any concerns, if you would please let myself know before our next council meeting. I do plan on putting him up there on the 27th of February.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to him before that.
Okay, contact information was in his application. He does not have a computer. He probably has a computer, but he does not email. So if you would just give him a phone call.
He does have a phone
Yes. Yes.
and knows how to use it.
Yes.
Too short a party line?
Nomination of Dexter Harrison for the Planning Commission. I believe Mr. Harrison is here tonight. He also, when my previous nominee was not passed by council, Mr. Harrison gave interest that he would be interested in serving on the Planning Commission. He is a longtime Snellville resident and serves on different organizations in the city. His application is in your packet. And again, if you have any questions for him, he is here. Feel free to talk to him, or if you have any concerns, please let me know before the 27th council meeting. Also, then item number F, nomination of Clay Hunter for the Evermore CID. The expansion of boundaries I'm with removing. I did speak with Principal Hunter. He would be excited to serve on the Evermore CID. I explained to him they meet at 2 o'clock in the afternoons on Fridays. Would that be a problem? He said no. I don't know, I've had some other people that have been interested in serving, however, they haven't been in the city of, they've had businesses outside of the city of Snellville. So I think Principal Hunter, since he does represent the high school there on 78, would be a good choice. But if you have any questions for him or concerns, again, please let me know before the 27th.
Well, is the Gwinnett County Board of Education going to allow a school principal to serve on that, in that capacity?
According to Principal Hunter, they are.
Okay.
And did I hear you say you're removing the expansion of the boundaries?
I had originally wanted to talk about expanding the boundaries at least to cover City Hall so the CID could meet here. Maybe that's something we want to look at in the future. It would make it a little bit more convenient for Principal Hunter to get here at 2 o'clock on Fridays. But I did talk to him, and if it is still at the tennis stadium, he still would be willing to serve and would like to serve on that board. So right now, I'm not going to push forward with that. If somebody else wants to, that's fine. I'm happy to support it, but at this point, I wasn't going to make it an issue.
Mayor, while we're on the subject, what, maybe we can discuss that some other time. To expand the boundaries, does that require a vote by council or CID or both, or how does that work?
Right now, well, it depends. If we just want to simply, right now it's my understanding that the CID comes up to the city property. And so if we simply want to expand it to cover City Hall, then it would just be the council voting and then the CID board accepting that because there would be no taxpayers involved in it. But if we wanted to expand it beyond City Hall, then there would be consequences for the property owners and we would have to go through that process. Any other questions? Okay. LCI update, Mayor Pro Tem Witz. Defer to Mr. Buckalt. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Buckalt. Any questions for Mr. Buckalt? Okay. Retreat date selection, moderator, Councilman Howard, do you have anything further you need to say on that? Resolution to retain counsel for the city council, Mayor Pro Tem Witz, anything further to say on that? Okay. Changes to the city charter, Mayor Pro Tem Witz.
I was just putting the council on notice with the discussion item here that I am going to be speaking with all the council members about changes to the city charter, probably nothing that can be done this session, but just putting everyone on notice. I will be calling them and talking to them about changes they'd like to see, some that I'd like to see, and bringing them forward so they can be ready for the next legislative session.
Is there any other business?
Madam Chair, I have a comment to make on the budget. What I would like to recommend for the budget this year is that once we have received the original budget document from the city manager, the council can schedule a budget work session to speak with each department head individually so that we can have a better understanding of the requests and line items on their documents. The department heads are also free to bring any other member of their department that they think may be helpful, as well as any documentation that they would like, which they feel would help us in understanding their departments and their budget. If there are any capital expenditures for their department or an unusual line item, that I think it would help if they could list those particular items according to an order of priority. With 3 new members on the council and this being our first budget, I think the department heads can be very helpful in making us aware of budgetary needs and concerns. Thank you.
Any questions or comments about the budget? And we'll discuss that in a little bit more detail when it gets closer in time. Does anybody have anything to put on the next work session or next regular council meeting? that was not carried over from tonight. We do have a few issues that need to be discussed in executive session. We have about a half an hour. Is it the will of the council to go into executive session now? Okay, do I have a motion? Let me get the paperwork. During the work session of the mayor and city council of Snellville, Georgia, Mayor Couts announced that certain matters should be discussed in a closed session of the meeting and asked council to advise the city with respect to closing the meeting. City Attorney Stuart Oberman advised the city of the following reasons to close the meeting. To discuss the future acquisition of real estate which is excluded from the Open Meetings Act pursuant to OCGA Section 50-14-3 subsection 4, and upon the appointment, employment, compensation, hiring, disciplinary action, or dismissal, or periodic evaluation or rating of a public officer or employee which is excluded pursuant to OCGA Section 50-14-3 subsection 6. Upon a motion of Councilman and seconded by Councilmember Howard, the following council members and mayor were present and voting. Mayor Couts, yes. Councilman Emanuel. Councilman Howard. Councilwoman Kraus.
Yes.
Councilman Sabah. Mayor Pro Tem Witz. Okay, with that, the meeting was closed to the public. If we could reconvene in about 3 minutes across the hallway in the conference room.